Hey, how are we doing today? Welcome to Your Successful Retirement. I want to talk about college and specifically funding college today. I do a lot of things on college. It's one of those, it's a hot button issue for me, I guess, and I'm not going to deal with those issues today. We want to talk about how the heck are you going to pay for this? Because college is expensive and a lot more than it used to be. And I know, oh yeah, a lot more than it used to be. Is my grandmother was famous for that. My grandparents is I love my mom's folks were I was really close to them growing up. Would spend a large part of my summer with them and things like that. They lived in Boston, so I got to hang out and go see a lot of stuff. And but they were always famous for back in my day. Remember the one I remember. I don't know why I remember is my grandmother lived somewhat near. Now, who knows? It could have been 10 miles away because it's the 1920s and you just walk everywhere, take a horse or whatever at the time still. And she lived near, I think, this ice cream cone factory, which is pretty interesting. You don't think about that of, oh, every city needs an ice cream cone factory. If you're going to have ice cream cones, you're probably not going to ship them across the country in the 1920s. And for a nickel, she could buy, and she would hold up, her hands were probably 18 inches apart. She'd say, we get a big paper bag of broken ice cream cones. And she said, we go in, everybody would bring a penny and we go down and we give them our 5 pennies. We get this bag. And that would be our treat in the summertime was we just sit around as kids and eat this gigantic bag of ice cream cones. And I did the same thing. It was funny when I was in college. So this is where it comes from is I'm doing this exact same thing is there was a fortune cookie company in Boston at the time. I don't think it exists anymore because fortune cookies they're all individually wrapped now. Remember when they weren't wrapped they were just like fortune cookies. That was it. And now they're individually wrapped. There's like maybe 3 big factories across the country and that's it. I know there's a big one in New York City area. There's one in San Francisco, and there might be one someplace else. Why I know this, I don't know, but I do. But there was a factory, quote unquote, in Boston, and you could buy at this local Chinese grocery store broken fortune cookies. Again, a bag. Probably it was a plastic bag. It was probably 12 inches tall, 8 inches around. It would take you a month to eat them all for $1. It was $1. And that was just, I just grab it. And my sister loved fortune cookies. So I grabbed that and bring it home and we just eat it. She'd eat more than me because they were okay. But I was never a big fortune cookie person. But yeah, so you get those things. It's hard to compare the past to the present, but things are expensive when we talk about college today. When I went to Bentley University, Bentley College back then in 1987, it was about $7,000 for tuition the first year. I just looked. 2025, 2026 tuition this year, just tuition, no room and board, no fees. Now, when I went almost 40 years ago, there weren't many. I think there was a technology fee because at the time they had a prime computer, and we had to buy or rent a laptop. That we were the first class to actually get laptops. Man, you had a strong lap. The thing weighed like 35 pounds. But anyways, there weren't all of these bonkers, the this fee and the that fee, and we're going to throw this fee in there. It was just, here's the tuition. This is what the number is. It was $7,000. I just looked, just the tuition, not including all of the fees, was $63,000. Wow. I did the calculation. It's about 6% inflation over the last 38 years. That's a lot of inflation. That's a very expensive proposition. And as you look as parents, or as grandparents, how are we going to pay for that? And I want to kind of break that down across a bunch of different categories of age categories of the student, just to kind of get a sense of what you should be thinking about. I think the first question we have to ask is it worth it? Is it worth going to college? It's very different from 38 year ago. 38 years ago, going to Bentley was a big deal. People went, oh, you went to Bentley. I'm not so sure that works today. I recently met with a gentleman. He graduated from Holy Cross in the early 70s. How do I know that? In our meeting, he said it no less than 12 times, because in the early 70s, graduating from Holy Cross, which is a fairly good college university, that was a big deal. And he could ride that for a lot because, oh no, I went to Holy Cross and this and that. And he's 70 something years old, still mentioning it today. That type of cachet doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't. Unless you're going to Harvard or Yale or Stanford, it just doesn't exist. It's to use one of those big words, it's ubiquitous. Is everybody gets one, and especially for undergraduate, it's not that there's not that much of a difference between educational institutions in a lot of cases. There are some specializations, but by and large, that the degrees that people are pursuing today, there's not a lot of differentiation. You have to kind of figure out what are things going to cost in order to send your child. So what type of institution should you send them? So public versus private. We'll talk about the cost of that in a second. Should they go to college at all? Do they really need to do so? Is all of a sudden when everybody has a college degree, we start questioning, well, why do we have that requirement anymore? And there are starting to be more and more institutions out there, more and more employers rather, that are questioning this requirement that, oh, you have to have a college degree. Why? Oh, right. I remember when I was in college, working in Boston at a trust company, and there was a gentleman there that went to Brown University, and very good school, very good education, better than the education I got at Bentley, and I got a good education at Bentley. And he was all about the classics. He was all about the humanities, and that was a big deal. I don't know if it doesn't relate anymore or people don't care. I look at my kids. I have 3 kids that we put through college. In the recent years, state schools, they didn't learn any of that, like zero of it. I learned some of it. This guy learned a lot of it. They learned zero. I don't know if it's practical or not. I think to some extent it is, but you have to look at that. Today, a private university in the North, let's say the Northeast, let's focus on that, or big colleges throughout the country, $50,000 to $100,000 a year, easy, could be more than that. Public is probably somewhere for in-state, maybe a low of $20,000 and a high of maybe 45, maybe 50 if you're getting up there into more prestigious, location within your state. It's not cheap. If you figure $100,000 for a 4-year degree, that's $400,000. They could buy most of a house or be educated. And that wasn't the case when I went, again, 38 years ago. $7,000, let's call it $12,000 with tuition. I couldn't buy a house for $50,000. It was still $100,000 to buy a house. Just trying to balance that and see the comparisons. The comparisons are often, I would say, real estate historically is overvalued now versus what it was 38 years ago. So let's talk about, based on the age of your student, whether it's your student or a grandchild or a niece or nephew, kind of what you want to be thinking about, because at each stage, your thoughts are going to change. And I'm hoping that people that are near certain stages get prompted by this to actually change the way they're looking at it, because you can look at it as your kid is 8 years old until they're 18 and we have to deal with this. So let's talk about the younger kids. And this is younger, from newborn to maybe 8, 10, 12 years old. It's a long way off. We don't know what educational path that child wants to go to. We don't know what that's going to cost. We don't know any of that. We don't know what the costs are going to be in the future. And you're looking 10 years out. I think education will look very different 10 years out than it does today, just because of demographics. As we have more institutions, less students. And you're starting to see that. You're starting to see institutions close. COVID definitely accelerated that to some extent. But I think last year's college entry class was the largest college entry class, and it only shrinks from here. And it's going to shrink more rapidly as we go 12, 20, and 30 years from now. But let's focus on the nearer term. So what do you do with you have anywhere from 8 to 18 years. The 529 plan, which is a college savings plan, is usually the best option for people. There are definite upsides. There are definite downsides. The upside is you put the money in, non-deductible contribution. It grows tax-free. If you withdraw it for educational purposes, all of the money comes out tax-free. That's a big deal. That's awesome. So you can put in $20,000 and it grows to $50,000, let's say. You withdraw that extra $30,000 and there's no taxes due. The taxes on that $50,000 might be as high as $6,000 to $8,000 that you would normally pay. That's a big deal. What's the downside to a 529? It's only for educational purposes. If you wind up, now a 529, let me caution on this. A 529 is not in the student's name. This 529 is in your name. So again, if you're a grandparent, you can have a 529 that's in your name for your grandchild. That's important. You get to control that. So one of the foibles of 529 is because it's your account, not the student's account. If you have 3 grandchildren, let's say, and you're putting money away an equal amount on all 3, and the oldest one is a plumbing whiz and is going to go out and he's going to get his plumber's certification and be a master plumber and then open his own business, and he's never going to go to college. Oh no, I've got all of this money in this account. What do I do with it? I could take it out. And if you take it out, if you withdraw the money for yourself, you'll pay all of the taxes plus a 10% penalty. It's like taking out money early from an IRA, but it doesn't matter how old you are. That 10% penalty is no matter how old you are, because the government doesn't want you stuffing money into a 529 as a backdoor IRA contribution. They want to stop that. They want it just for education. But in that situation, let's say your oldest is going to be that master plumber. You can move that money from the oldest accounts to the next one or the next 2 and spread it out that way. We did that with our kids. Is we had leftover money in my older daughter's 529 plans, and my son, who's now 17, we're looking. He's almost finished with his junior year. Next year, he looks at colleges and applies, and the following year he goes to college. We slid all of that money when our daughters were finished, that we didn't utilize all of that for whatever reason. We moved that money over into his name so that we could maximize his account. And part of the reason that my daughters did that was, God bless them both, they weren't crazy about college. They weren't real fond of it. They had better things to do with their lives. They both finished in 3 years and saved us a bunch of money doing that. So it's one of those ways that your kids can help you out and help themselves out. Finishing faster is better. And I will tell you that colleges, universities, my son was visiting a local, very highly rated private university about a month ago, and they talked during orientation of it's okay to be on the 5-year plan. Thanks. I really appreciate you telling me it's okay for me to write another massive check to your institution. How about no? How about we try to get it faster as opposed to longer? Colleges are a business, and I don't want to get into that. Colleges stopped being educational institutions probably 35 to 40 years ago. Now they are businesses, and they're trying to maximize their profit, and that's frustrating. So I digress. So the 529 plan can be good, but you want to be careful not to put too much money. If you put too much money, now we have problems later on. You can always carry it to somebody else. So I have a granddaughter, and I have another granddaughter on the way. If my son, for whatever reason, got a whole bunch of scholarships and didn't need any of his 529 money, I can slide that to my grandchildren. We can go as deep as that. So there's an ability to make those changes. 529 can be very, very helpful. The second thing I will tell you is don't get caught up in the insurmountable cost. Because you can look as the parent of a toddler and think, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford $150,000 to $400,000 ever. And you just get dejected. You don't save it all. Don't do that. Put money away, even if it's a small amount, even if it's not in a 529, it's just in a separate bank account or a separate investment account or a UTMA, which I'm not crazy about. And that's probably the topic of another podcast. It's important to just do something. The something will make a difference later on, especially early something. And I know early something is hard because you've got this new child. You've got a house more than likely. One spouse is working part-time or no time, and there's all those expenses. Diapers are expensive, all of that. You're trying to save for retirement. There's a lot of draws on your cash, but if you can set aside money, it will make a massive difference down the road. So now all of a sudden your student is in the teens. Now what do you start thinking about? This is where you start changing your focus. This is where we start getting serious. It's important to make these changes. It's important to make these changes early so that you don't get a big surprise. The first thing is I would look at, if you don't have a 529 plan that automatically adjusts the type of investments, and most of them do. Most 529s have a system where you can put the money in, and as your child reaches age milestones, the account gets more and more conservative. Makes sense. The closer you get to college age, the more conservative you want that. Definitely something you want to look at if you're building this on your own, to make sure that those type of things are happening. Let me tell you a quick story. Eons ago, so 32 years ago, 33 years ago, I was renting an apartment in a three family in Somerville, Massachusetts, in an area right now that's going to be worth a fortune. And it went down after I left and came screaming back up because all of a sudden Cambridge, if you're not familiar with the Boston area, you have Cambridge. It's literally in Cambridge, and that's a big deal. Somerville's just on the edge of it, and it's also euphemistically referred to as Slummerville. I loved Somerville. Somerville had more restaurants per capita than any place on the face of the earth. You could get any sort of food. It was awesome, and it was inexpensive. And we rented from this guy, Alex, and Alex worked at one point for Lotus Development. And you're probably saying, if you're under 50, you're just probably saying, what's a Lotus Development? Lotus created this thing called Lotus 123. Well, it was Excel today. Excel wasn't the first and best. Lotus 123 actually wasn't the first and best. There was VisiCalc before Lotus 123. But Lotus 123, all of those functions that you utilize in Excel, Lotus 123 invented that. And I still use to this day all of the function tricks in Lotus 123 carry over into Excel 30 years later. They also built this thing called Lotus Notes, which was a database / communications tool that was very powerful. IBM wound up buying out Lotus in the late 90s, I believe. Because they didn't care about 123. 123 was dying. They cared about Lotus Notes and the technology that was in that, and they've utilized that for their networks and all of that. So it's 1992, 93, and we're building a house, the house we live in now, and Alex is talking about he wants to build a house as well. He's going to build a house up in New Hampshire. I'm not sure if Alex is full of it or not. I never was sure. He would say things and then do things, and I kind of scratch my head. He once gave my wife some perfectly good tires for her new to her car that were the same size. I didn't know. I was 24 years old. I brought the tires plus, threw the tires in the hatchback of the car, drove it down to the local shop, had them replaced it. The guys at the shop didn't care. It was $5 a tire back then. The tires were like 12, 15 years old. And about 6 months later, she had a complete blowout on the highway because the tires were dry rotted. They were ancient. Alex was like that. Oh, there was great tread on them, and the tires were trash. And I didn't know better. And the guy putting the tires on the car didn't care. He just wanted his $5 a tire. That's how Alex was. You never knew how serious he was. He was going to build this house up in New Hampshire. And he's telling me, yeah, I'm going to, I worked for Lotus for 10 years, eons ago. I got 120. I forget how many shares it was at what price. I did the quick math because I knew what Lotus was going for. $120,000 worth of Lotus stock. Holy cow. My whole house cost $120,000. He had that much in cash, plus whatever equity he had in the three family that he was living upstairs from us in Somerville. Holy cow. And I said, Alex, I'd recommend selling that stock, because if you're within a year of buying this house, building this house, I would sell it now and just capitalize on it. And he's like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And he used to do these big hand gestures all the time. And we move out September of 94. And I watch, and I think it was that year, he had not started building. And last I had talked to him, he hadn't sold a stock. And that stock absolutely cratered. And all I could think of is he can't build this house now. Whether it was true or not that he was going to, I wasn't sure. But if it was true, he was not going to build that house. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place because he didn't get conservative as that time was coming. He tried to get the last ounce out of that investment. And I would say that you want to be careful. The odds are in your favor to get that last ounce. But if you're wrong, it is ferociously costly. And you basically take this college education fund and wipe it out. So don't do that. The first thing you want to do as you're getting near mid-teens is to get more conservative. Again, the 529, if you have one, should be doing that automatically. Double check. But if not, you want to get more conservative with your college savings investments. Maybe just put it in a money market. Thankfully, these days, money markets and CDs are paying a reasonable rate of return versus 10 years ago when they were paying 0.5, 0.8, 1.2. They're paying 4 as I record this in early May. So there's at least some growth there. The second thing, and this is the one nobody likes to do, and it's probably more important, if you can believe it, figure out how much it's going to cost you out of cash flow to send your child to wherever you're going to send them. So let's say you look and you do all the math and you go, wow, it's going to cost us $1,000 a month. Guess what I'm going to tell you to do now? Start saving $1,000 a month. Get used to living at that level because it is going to be a shock. I am telling you, I'm dealing with a couple of families right now that are near that stage where their student is getting ready to go. And it's their lifestyle change is massive. And you're not going to be able to save an extra $1,000 a month, more than likely the first month. But starting now and building that up is going to serve you in two ways. Number one, it's going to build that college nest egg a little bit more money. Maybe it's only $10 or $15 or $20,000 you're able to save over the next several years, but that's that much more you can save. Number two, it's going to get you used to a lower lifestyle that you're going to have to deal with anywhere between 4 to 12 years, maybe, depending on how many children you have and how much overlap there is. There could be an extended period of time of you having to deal with that. So those are the two things. If things are upcoming, several years away, teens, 13, 14, things of that nature. What about if it's imminent? You're a year away. It's this year. What the heck do we do? Oh my gosh. Now we're in crisis mode. We were hoping to not get here, but now we're in crisis mode. How do we deal with that? It's really strange how we do financial aid today versus, again, 38 years ago, or even 35 years, or even 30 years ago. I remember in my 20s advising people that had children of college age, and it was, yeah, we're just going to take out a home equity loan. That was what it was. Is parents had no problem paying the whole chunk of college. It was, they'll pay, again, relating to my son today, and what the costs are. I said, William, you have to understand. I said, when I was in college 38 years ago, I would work all summer. I had a full-time job. I got paid $6.20 an hour. Think about that. $6.20 an hour, say 12 weeks, 40 hours a week. And I would make enough to pay room and board for the entire year. Room and board now is $25,000. You're not going to make that, even at whatever kids are making these days for wages. It's impossible to save that much. I had that much money, plus I had walking around money every day, plus I paid taxes on all of that. Plenty of money. And today it's impossible. It is just so difficult. So putting money against your house isn't happening. Is the government has forced on us accidentally. They didn't intend to do this, but they have forced this loan system on us where loans are the majority of the financial aid that people are receiving today, loans that the student is responsible for. And if you talk to students in their 20s and early 30s, they're talking about dozens of tens of thousands, dozens of tens of thousands of $50,000 to $150,000 of student loan debt. And it's stopping them from buying a house, getting married, starting a family. All of that is it's setting up all of that as delayed. And that's a problem. So you need to be aware of that and aware of how this financial aid game is going to work before you get there, if possible, because it's an ugly game. There's a couple of different things that when you apply for financial aid that you'll realize. First thing is you fill out this whole FAFSA form that will go through and look at all your tax data and things like that. Is ridiculously invasive. And they'll come up with this number called an FC, or family contribution. This is how much they think you can afford based on your financial data and your students' financial data. Your students' financial data, the majority of their money, assets and income, is set aside for college. And a portion of your assets and income are set aside for college. You get to this family contribution. Let's say that it costs $80,000 a year to go to XYZ university, and your family contribution is $25,000. You go, oh, I can afford $25,000. Okay, that does not mean you're getting $55,000 worth of scholarships. Nope, no. First thing you're going to get is something called college work study, where your student works at the college. They get paid, and the federal government then pays the university for that student. So you get paid twice. You get paid for working there, and you get a commensurate reduction in your tuition. It's a great deal. Second thing you're going to get is loans. Loans. Is you'll start with a federally subsidized loan, and then if you're short on that, you'll have to pick up other loans on top of that. And then last but not least is the scholarship from the university, which they may or may not give you. Most of them are pretty generous in terms of giving you something. They're not always giving you everything. And that's where people get stuck. You need to be aware of that. So again, going all the way back to what's the best thing for my student? A is should it be college? But B, what are they doing with their lives? Is this just a generic business degree? And no disrespect to generic business degrees, or are they something very specific? That may dictate what you're going to spend on that education. For instance, my son wants to go into marine biology, and he understands he's never going to make a lot of money at that. And we're in discussions right now of what's the best place for him. There's a university close by that's very expensive that would give him a lot of experience. But is he going to have to get to another degree or maybe two to actually be successful in this field? All of a sudden, then the first college doesn't matter. Now we're trying to cheap that out to spend the money on the second college. And maybe you go cheap the first one, and then you go to the expensive place for your graduate degree or something like that. All of those things have to play in. Where are you going with this? What's important? I see so many parents and sometimes grandparents that say, well, my child has to go to, and I'll use the Northeast stuff. They got to go to BC or BU, period. They just have to. I did. They have to go. It's $100,000 a year, whatever it is. It's something in that range. And they're not going to get the benefit you believe they're going to get out of it. And sometimes it's the parents are okay saddling that child with all of that debt. They can just pay it. They'll figure it out. I don't understand why you would do that. Why would you hand all of that, especially if they don't need that degree, or if they have to go for a more advanced degree? I'm cautioning you. You need to make sure that you know what you're spending your money on. Are you getting that value? I still believe, and I've said this before, that inside of the next 10 years, universities' marketing will change from, oh, it's a great experience. Oh, check out our make your own omelet bar. Oh, the pillows we have on the beds are spectacular. And that's really what they focus on these days. To, if you come here, we can show you how the majority of our students make 20% more than the average student in this field. That's a big deal. That's a selling point. All of a sudden, now I'm willing to pay more for your place versus the next place because I think I'm going to make more money than the other guys. That's a big deal. I think that's going to change. So you need to look at that and figure out where your student is going. Is that important for them to have that degree from that institution? And then figure out what's that going to cost and who's going to pay it. Are you going to pay it? Are they going to pay it? How much are they going to pay? How much are you going to pay? How is it going to affect their life? And how is that going to affect your retirement? So be aware of all of that. Lastly, I'll wrap up here. Scholarships. This isn't as bad as it used to be, but it's not surprising to see a family spend a lot of time trying to get outside scholarships. There used to be back in the 90s, there was a commercial on TV that you get this book for $19.95 of 8 billion different scholarships. It was like an inch and a half thick. It was printed on newsprint, so there's a lot of pages in there. It's talking about 17 billion different scholarships that did not get funded last year that you could qualify and you could pay for your education. And it was kind of like at the same time, and you see this guy on like QVC every once in a while. Remember the guy with the skinny guy, tall glasses, really prominent glasses, and he had the question mark suit. And he did the same thing. He had a book about government benefits, this big, thick book about government benefits and all these things you can get from the government if you're doing this and you're doing that. And you need to buy this book. And there was clearly something else that he was selling beyond that, that was like a lost leader to him. And he could have been the same guy doing the college one. I don't know. But you get this situation where, oh my gosh, how about we go out and we get a bunch of scholarships to be able to pay for this. So your family contribution is $25,000. You get $15,000 for the scholarships, and you think, I only have to pay 10. Probably not. You probably still have to pay 25 in most cases. Those numbers are reported, especially significant ones. So you're not going to get $15,000 worth of scholarships, $150 at a time or $500 at a time. It's a lot of them. You're going for big numbers. Those awards are reported, and more than likely the institution you're going to is going to reduce your aid package by that amount. You're going to do a whole lot of work for somebody else. Now, it could reduce the loans, so that could be very beneficial, but it's likely not going to reduce your family contribution at all. And I see people thinking about that. They're a year, 2 years out. No, Becky's going to do a whole bunch of scholarships, and we're going to pay for this. Not always. Not often. Now, if you're paying the whole boat yourself and you want your kid to participate by doing scholarships, I think that's great. If you're paying the whole thing, then you don't have to worry about any of that. You're not dealing with financial aid. You will still deal with financial aid because I don't understand this, but especially at state universities, they require you to fill out a FAFSA even if you're paying cash. But why? I'm paying cash. They are invasive. They want your information. I hate them. I dislike them. As you can see, I'm not real fond about college right now. But we won't get into that. So just to wrap up, focus on where your child is right now, where your student is, where your grandchild, whatever it is. If it's early, save 529 plan if possible. If not, some other type of account. Grandparents often will set up an account if they don't want to do a 529. They'll do what's called a POD, pay on death. They'll set up an investment account in their own name. If they pass away, it passes to little Jimmy automatically. So they know it's little Jimmy's money. If your student's in the teens, now you want to start making things more conservative, and you want to start thinking about saving more money to get into that paying for college mode. And then when it's imminent, a year out, 6 months out, whatever it is, now it's serious. Now you have to start looking at the real numbers and seeing if it's viable and making sure you make good decisions so that you don't jeopardize your retirement or saddle your child with decades of debt. So that's what I have for you today. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Remember, the views expressed are not necessarily those of Successful Money Strategies. All content is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement of any third party or their views, or as a solicitation or offer to sell securities or provide investment, tax, legal, or consulting services. We believe the information presented to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed for accuracy or completeness. Investing involves risk. including the potential loss of principal. Hypothetical returns do not reflect actual trading and may not be indicative of the performance of any specific investment. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Additional information, including management fees and expenses, is provided on our Form ADV Part 2, available upon request, or at the SEC's Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website, https://advisorinfo.sec.gov.